Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show, we're talking about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season finale of Roswell, New Mexico. A great season finale. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. First and foremost, we're immediately picking up after the previous episode. Luckily, Max, Isabel, and Michael did kind of what I was pretty much guessing, where they were just going to each kind of grab one person, since they're both, all of them aren't really up to, or maybe all three of them together are lifting everyone. Whatever the case may be, luckily they were able to get everybody across without much issues. So I was like, okay, good. Luckily that worked out. But Isabel did give the serum to Jones, but now it's like they're on the clock, because now that they've given him the serum, his genetics are a little different. So like the moment like it's out of his system, they won't be able to inject him twice. The serum won't work again, because his body will basically build up a defense against and realize like, oh, this is a foreign substance we need to watch out for. We weren't ready before, but we're ready this time. So this is their one shot. So they have to think of a plan of like, they have to switch Max and Jones together while they're like not like connected anymore, and then they can kill Jones without killing Max. But the problem is like, well, how do they do that? How do they find, Jones? Well, at the end of the day, they ultimately decide like, well, Michael ends up actually coming up with the idea of like, I can't remember if it's then or later on in the episode, but he starts thinking about like, well, because initially they were thinking about tracking the Lockhart machine the same way. It's like, oh yeah, like they just get a radio and they turn the signal like, and now like pinpoint where the Lockhart machine is Jones is. But Michael then suggests, why don't we actually do that with Max's consciousness? So that way, rather than it just being locking onto the Lockhart, we use those machines that kind of communicate with each other, and in turn basically signal Max back into his original body while signaling Jones back into his. We get locked and loaded and prepared and like end this once and for all. So kind of dealing with, like I said, the aftermath of everything that was kind of brought up last episode in other regards as well, because luckily Dallas is okay, but Heat's by his side, because none of them are really resting, because they've all got to get this science perfect, because if they don't, like, things could go wrong. So Heath actually finally apologizes for everything. It's like, right, I only think about like the whole working with Jones things, but I forgot like, right, all that you did is like, yeah, I kind of put Maria in a coma. I kind of like, I did a lot to like, Kyle as well. So like, it's like, right, I forgot, you do have a lot more to apologize for. It's still for the sake of your best friend, so I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm not as, oh yeah, like, because I forgot about the other stuff too, so like, I'm not as, I was like, still a little bit more forgiveness on the horizon in that regard. But I forgot what actually, oh yeah, it was him saying like, oh, he needed Dallas being like, oh, this is a soap opera. He's like, I just, play me some music, something that'll get the blood pumping. And that gave Liz an idea about kind of a missing factor in all of this. And I forgot how I'm already blanking on why they needed it, but adrenaline was necessary. And it turns out like their species, there's a certain organ that they have that pumps adrenaline. It's just full of adrenaline. So they end up kind of drawing that out of Max. Granted, at the time, he had a lot on his mind, because both him and Michael were both avoiding the people they loved. Him, Liz, and Michael, Alex, just kind of like, we're all kind of, none of them knows how this is all going to play out. And it's interesting because from Max's perspective, he's already kind of under the assumption like, oh, we might lose. And if it needs to come down to it, like if I look at Liz, I might not be able to do what's necessary when the time comes. So I need you, brother, to like put me down. But it's like, no, don't go into this with this mentality of like, yeah, this might be the end. But it's like, yeah, you're up here getting like turquoise, but like you got plenty of it back at your place, Michael, so like, why are you here? I'm not the only one. Like, are you going into this like as eyes wide open as much as you could? And for Alex, it's like, yeah, let's be there for for Michael, it's like, yeah, let's be there for the people we love, because yes, maybe you won't be here tomorrow, maybe I won't either, but that doesn't give us the excuse to kind of run away. Like, let's be honest with the people we care about. So Max is kind of honest with Liz, what he's kind of been avoiding her, because for him it's like, it's like you deserve so much more. You deserve happiness. You deserve all the greatness that life can like hold for you. And he's, it's a thing of just kind of fears of like, I don't want to be the reason that holds you back. And I thought it was a really sweet, that scene honestly was really sweet, plus the music on top of it. But her calming him down, because like for her it's like, you've always done it. She's like, remember that first time when we were kids, like you let me listen to that song when you want me? She's like, I can't remember the song. He's like, yeah, I can never hold on to it. He's like, I can remember it when I'm running or like in the shower, but I can never just like quite remember it. And it's like, for her it's like, that was one of the earliest moments. Like, you told me that I made you kind of feel, I forgot what the exact wording she was, but it made him feel like he found his place here in this world because of her. And she's like, I'm so glad I was able to give that to you. But I also realized even back then, like, you are always able to like clear my head, like, you know, in the moments where it just feels like it's just her and him and Roswell. It's like he's just like, she's giving something to him, he's kind of giving her that peace of mind where everything's kind of going quiet, even the science in her head. And for her it's like, she thought in the past she would have to choose between Max or the science, but it's like, no, I realize now it can be Max and the science, you know. So, but like I said, just the music on top of it, and I think that conversation, hearing that, means a lot to Kyle, because I think it kind of got him thinking about like a lot of like, you know, it's like, right, like, you know, what tomorrow holds, like, you know, what he's feeling about Isabel, that he's kind of keeping himself. The only person that knows how he feels is Maria, so it's still kind of buried underneath. So I think a lot of that's kind of got him questioning, like, you know, if I get the opportunity, like, will I say to Isabel? Which Isabel's kind of panicking a little bit, because like, obviously I thought it was going to be her going to Michael to help repair the sword, but in actuality she works with Maria and Rosa, and it makes sense because that's the new squad right there of putting the sword back together. And you know, Isabel's like, yeah, everyone else is focusing on these theoretical things. This sword is like something physical. It's right here. We know it can hurt Jones, but then her nose starts bleeding because she hasn't been on pause. Like, she's been go, go, go. You know, she's so adamant about taking him down. But obviously, you know, even Rosa being like, yeah, maybe you should take a step back. And she's like, oh, why? Do you think because I'm weak? It's like, a lot of those insecurities start popping up again. And so she starts, because she never actually was able to deal with her insecurities and issues like last episode. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, right? I mean, yeah, she and Kyle talked and everything. Now I'm remembering. Yeah, like, they talked and everything, but I think it still wasn't enough to kind of fully help her, because the problem is she just keeps comparing herself to her mom, and that's where, like, it's like me, you know, Maria's like, me and Rosa will work on the sword. You just kind of take time to kind of rest. And she goes off and she's just shooting bows. And for her, like, at the end of the day, what's really bothering her is, like, you know, for her in this moment, it feels like her entire life is falling apart around her, and she feels like she can't do enough for it. But then Rosa kind of points her in the right direction, or just kind of like, what is it that's really eating away at you? And basically take that bow and arrow and keep firing until you hit the bullseye. Just like what it is at its core that you're trying to, like, what you're really dealing with. Because she's like, at the end of the day, I can't help you with what it is. Like, we can tell you that you're good, but it's like, that's not going to stick. Like, the strength's got to come from within her, because it's something she has to deal with, like her insecurities. And ultimately we find out what it is that she brings up. Like, she hasn't been able to let her walls down. Like, especially in the past year, she's been adamant about kind of going the lone wolf route, because once again, it stems from the Noah stuff. Like, she felt like she wasn't strong enough, and so she felt like she had to be like, no, I got to be strong on my own, like, not really rely on anyone, because she, I guess in some way she thought it'd make her weak, but it's just because she put up so many walls and barriers that it made it harder for, like, people to kind of get through. But now it's kind of a thing of, like, she's willing to kind of let them down and realize, like, right, I'm not in this alone, but I do have other people with me. And that's a core factor in all of this, of, like, the reason why the blade wasn't strong enough before is because, you know, it works a little differently with them. It's like, right, the power of it can come from, like, the triad, the family you've chosen, or your actual family. So it's like, right, this, because it's Nora, Theo, and Luis held this blade, because that was the triad. And so in this particular case, I think their circumstances are a little different, because it's not just your mom. Like, this blade, it's like that was the triad beforehand. Now it's like, how about this actual family of the bloodline of Luis, you, her daughter, and me, her great-granddaughter? I always forget, like, what, like, Luis and Maria's, like, actual, like, yeah, I think his great-granddaughter is, like, the what they be, or whatever the case may be. It's like family, you know? And I thought was interesting because obviously Maria heard about, like, she learned about her mom's situation, that it is worsening. And so for her, it's like, she's willing to help with all of this because it's like, right, like, you have treated me like a sister, and I feel like you're a sister to me too. So I mend you today, you mend me tomorrow. You know, I mean, that's what family does. So we're there for each other when the time comes, because she's hoping, like, if we're able to kill Jones, then Liz can study his body and then potentially help me from ever ending up in the same situation as my mom. Because this involved using the bracelet, not bracelet, the thing that Michael made for her to make it so that it would keep her powers from, like, affecting her brain. But it's like, yes, the yellow pollen is a it nullifies her power, but then, like, the other pieces to the flower represent, as Jones told Liz, alien building blocks. So that, with their blood and them as a family coming together and recreating the blade, so it's back and kind of forged from family bonds this time through. So literal family bonds between, kind of, you know, like I said, Luis, Isabel, and Maria. And so with sword in hand, they're ready to kick some ass. Obviously, they've got all they need. Well, then there's also the Alex and Michael situation where Michael confides in Alex about, like, being afraid. It's not about if they lose tomorrow, it's what if they win. It's like, after what we've been through, we lost each other for 15 years because of just kind of what, like, happened between us was destroyed by your dad. And it's like, what if, like, will we be able to survive something like that again? Will you be able to still love me if I kill my dad? Will I still be able to love me if I kill my dad? And it's like, will we be able to survive that? But for Alex, it's like, we're not the same people we were 15 years ago. We're not even the same people we were a year ago. You know, trust that, you know, they'll find a way through this. That they've all they've grown and they've changed, and that they can adapt to, like, you know, essentially whatever comes their way. So obviously it comes down to the plan of, like, all right, let's make this happen. So they get Max tied to one of, like, the Roswell antennas. It got him in the parts of the cage, like, keeping him in place, while also got the cuffs on him. So they activate it, and, well, because Eduardo, which we never actually found out, like, how because I think Eduardo, maybe that was part of the plan, but I think Eduardo tracked him down by himself, didn't he? But I mean, maybe that was part of the plan. Like, so it's like, because we never did exactly find out how he actually tracked Jones down. But when he does, like, obviously it's like they switch by. Sadly, like, Max found himself in the middle of stabbing Eduardo, but luckily he was able to heal him, so it's like that worked out. But even locked up, that smug bastard Jones is kind of like, oh, you guys think you got it all figured out. They're all together, and he's like, oh, look at this ragtag team. It's like, you think you can actually beat me? He's like, yeah, like, whichever one of you helps me will survive, because when I get out of here, you know, it's like, no, together we'll stand. It's like, no, together you'll fall. So, and he's even saying, Arosa, do you know what it is that my genius of a son, like, forgot about? And we find out pretty quickly, it's like, right, the bats. Like, it was something that Michael had let slip his mind at the last time, like, when it came to all of this, like, it threw the bats, like, echolocation off, so they come stampeding through, and because of that, like, they end up destroying the machines and stuff. So, and I like the hot potato situation that kind of goes on between the consciousnesses. It was actually pretty dope of just kind of like, in that moment, Jones is like, now where's that, well, because he gets back in Max's body, and he's there with Kyle, but luckily, Alex tased him, and then, like, eventually, like, it shifts back over, because, like, they're, like, battling him, and it's like, whoa, Isabel, it's me, and he switches back over, and it's like, Evans, is that you? Damn it, Kyle, yes, it's me, and it's just, like, I like the subconscious, like, the conscious, like, back and forth, that was pretty dope. But obviously, it's just, like, once again, just, like, the telekinesis, like battle of the minds of just kind of, like, yeah, he's got the sample right in the middle, and then, like, Liz and Michael, Jones and Michael are doing their tug of war, and luckily Liz grabs it in the middle, but obviously, like, he circles himself in a fire surrounding himself, of, like, making sure him and Liz are there, and it's like, right, obviously, like, the clock is ticking and they've got to make this happen. They've got to make it count. So everyone had shown up. Everyone's kind of around the fire, and it's just like, well, luckily Kyle has a fire extinguisher, so they were able to like extinguish a fire enough for Isabel to go in there, and in one fell swoop shatters his blade. It's like, oh, you shattered mine, but now I shattered yours. Side note, did Isabel's sword look a little different than anyone else's? Like, I guess maybe it's certain camera angles, like the tip of her sword seemed, it was different, but maybe that was just my imagination. Maybe it's just the camera angle that made it seem like it. Because in other cases, it looked like it was the same, because I almost expected it to be a little different. But like I said, just from certain camera angles, it looked like the tip of the sword was shaped a little different. But like I said, it could have just been the angle. But whatever. I love the fact is that as Liz is still holding on to the serum and everything, and it just turns into a situation of like, you know, it's like, oh, and him and Max both working the radio at the same time, and like the back and forth are just kind of like shifting bodies like that. And if I was like, oh, it's going to turn into this, isn't it? And the machine breaks, and it's like, now who's who? It's like, look in my eyes, you'll know the truth. The sad thing is, Liz can't ask him anything without Jones automatically knowing, because he can just hijack it, like jump into Max's brain and know immediately everything he knows. So I love that. It's just kind of like, oh boy, locks and load the shotgun with the serum, and it's like, oh, yeah, so who's who? And it's like, it's too close, like there's too many emotions running high for Isabel to tell, and Rosa can't tell with them standing so close to each other, so it's like, it's up to Liz to decide. And then when it comes down to the song situation, I was like, wait for it. I was like, he's going to answer, and that's going to be the issue. And the moment he said sledgehammer, she's like, yeah, you exposed yourself. And she was almost like, I knew it, because Max said it himself early in the episode. That was the point. That the fact is, it will be an answer that Max won't be able to give, because he can never remember the song. He told Liz that, and for him, because it's like, right, it's like, Max, you said the song is always on in your head, so she knew if Jones answered, whoever answered would be Jones. So he got shot, but at the end of it, though, I love the situation of just kind of like Jones is trying to do his last minute switch, but Michael gives Max the shards of the blade, and he's able to kill Jones. So that was fascinating. So I was like, okay, cool. So it all worked out. Like, so none of them died. I was like, okay, so not even Eduardo's dead. So like, oh, they won victory. And it's like, okay. We get to some time later, and it's just, you know, it's the aftermath, the epilogue to everything. And it's just like, wow, now that Jones is dead. At first I was like, so how are you going to handle this with Sheriff Taylor? Are you going to be like, so yeah, because at first I was like, oh, so now you can be like, yeah, the person behind all this terrible stuff that you were thinking it was Max. You remember you saw two different Maxes? I guess it's going to be the whole thing of kind of like trying to like, Isabel's going to have to push her to kind of forget a lot of that. But it's like, it could have been like, yeah, my twin brother, you know, it's like, that probably could have been, but it's like, no, because they still need him, especially if they want to help Maria. It's like, plus, if he gets autopsies and stuff, alien stuff is going to come out, so can't like let things get handled that way. So I thought that was fascinating, but, you know, Max, Isabel, and Michael all together, you know, and it's like, Max is not looking backwards anymore, so all the letters he had written to everybody, he ends up burning them, because it's like, no, trying to say goodbye. It's like, if I have to say anything, like, no more secrets, we're gonna be more upfront with each other. So he ends up giving his sister, like, that margarita, or, like, that, like, particular recipe, and she's like, oh, I finally have it. Obviously, Dallas is amongst their ranks, and it's like, Dallas is like, oh, this is good. It's like, yeah, acetone's in it. He's like, what? It's like, right, you don't know, like, that's kind of an alien thing. It's a whole thing. Like, there's still a lot more we got to fill you in on about it. So it's like, the ranks have grown. Another person has joined amongst their ranks of, like, you know, an alien. At the end of it all, Max was also able to keep his powers, so, I mean, well, and that's obviously, but still. But it's just, Kyle and Rosa, luckily for Eduardo, they were able to make her identity. I mean, it's lucky, it works having family in the, because he is family to her too, so it's like, it's lucky, so of course he's going to help out. It's like, yeah, help out my my half niece, but niece at the end of the day still, regardless of half or not, that's still my niece. So it's like, yeah, having governmental ties, I can make her identity stick. And it's like, yeah, go to New York. But for her, it's like, yeah, but what if I screw things up? And, you know, it's like, you know, he quotes back to her, you know, that, you know, the cracks let the light shine in. So it's kind of like, don't worry about it. Like, everything is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Don't worry too much about like you're going to fall and stumble, like, you know. So I'm also curious because there is the whole Wyatt situation. I'm curious, like, how that whole college thing is going to play out. And even if she doesn't end up there, I think it is nice for her to kind of, but at the end of the day, the sad thing is she will be drawn back to Roswell. Will there be any escaping Roswell? Who knows? Because all of them, there's so many ties and connections to Roswell that no matter what, Rosa having alien abilities and everything, she will eventually come back, I think, because eventually Roswell will draw her back home. So there's that. But it is simply going forward, celebrating. We hear a little bit about Heath, that he does obviously need to kind of, repent a little bit. But it's like, Dallas is like, yeah, a few drinks will kind of make that disappear. So I'm wondering, will we be keeping Heath around? Especially since Dallas is probably going to be sticking around. Probably we might get more of Heath in the future as well. But I also love that. It's just, it's a pure celebration because, it's like the whole thing of like, was Jones lying when he said he did call something, and it's like, well, for Michael, it's like, I got my first date with Alex and I don't have time to be worried about this right now. Just for the night, I'm going to put it off and focus on that, just focus on being happy and not about what comes tomorrow. Tomorrow is tomorrow's issue. We have tonight. We won, and let's just enjoy it and celebrate. So, he goes off with Alex, which I love that. It's like, right, I didn't expect this to be where our first date night would take us because it's in front of, Papa Main's. And it's like, Alex is like, we won, we beat him. And it's like, yeah. And then, Michael's like, yeah, no. And they look at each other. And I think it's just like, finally both of them letting go, because it's like, because that was the thing Alex had said, we already beat one monstrous father, what's one more? And in that moment, Alex takes the bandana off because it's a reminder of the past too. Like, well, for Michael, like around his hand, it's like, yeah, it's a reminder of the past. Like, let's both of us, like, let's go, let's walk in the street hand in hand together, so both of them finally letting go of the ties that, because that was a struggle for him still this season, dealing with the aftermath with his dad, but also just still feeling like he had to make up for all that his dad did, that nothing he did was enough to make up for what his dad did. So Michael kind of, I think, felt that to some extent, knowing like who his dad was now. But, they're able to both put those ghosts to rest now finally and go off on their own. You have Maria and Gregory, and she's like, oh, I got to make these drinks. But, it's like, well, I love Isabel being like, well, I'm a DeLuca. And I'm like, yeah, you are. Just like kind of, it's like, so let me kind of like run things here, like with the drinks and stuff like that. So they're able to go off. Isabel and Kyle running to each other in the bar. Because I'm like, everyone's getting their happy ending, like Alex and Michael, Max and Liz and Gregory and Maria. So I'm like, Kyle, I'm like, you're sadly not going to get yours just because it's like, well, we know like she's with Anasta, so it's like that's sadly not going to work out. But he's like, oh, this was for Maria. If you need me, I can help you clean up. And she's like, no, it's more cathartic. And he's like, okay, well, see ya. And she's like, well, give me, like, let's dance. And he's like, almost like, what? She's like, come on, it's just a dance. It doesn't mean it. He's like, oh, yeah. And they're getting ready to, and Anasta shows up because a great thing happened work-wise. And you're like, oh, it's heartbreaking. And he's just like, oh, and they start making it. He's like, oh, okay. He's like, oh, this is great. That's great news. They're like, oh, she's like, Isabel's like, oh, celebrate with us. He's like, no, you take the alcohol. I'll just get Maria some more. And it's just kind of like, for him for a second, I think he was like, oh, what am I, an idiot? Like, I'm not going to like destroy her. Like, because first and foremost, despite how he feels, Isabel's happy, and he doesn't want to ruin it. Because I think even Maria brought that up last episode, that, yeah, she is happy, like, and the fact is, after everything she's been through, is like, I don't want to be the one that ruins her happiness. It's just kind of like, what was like I said, I think hearing Liz and Max talk kind of got too much in his own head. He was just like, what am I thinking? Let my heart, like, rule me in that moment. It's like, no, think with your head. I'm just, like, not trying to ruin anyone else's relationship, so... And that's kind of sad. You're like, oh, Kyle, no. Oh, that's going to be complicated. Because it's also that thing of, like, what do you do? Like, because it's also that complicated thing of, like, yeah, you have feelings for Isabel, so is he going to avoid being around Isabel? He's just going to try and bury that deep. But that's also kind of almost the same thing as lying, too. Because it's being, like, you want to be more than friends with her, but you also know she's in a relationship. So it's like, how do you deal with that, Like I said, the only person that's aware of how he feels is Maria. So anytime, like, that comes up in the future, she's probably going to be like, probably feeling a little bad for Kyle, so he can't say anything without complicating things, because if he did, it's just going to like, oh, like, she's in a good relationship and you don't want to compromise that, but like, even throwing out your feelings there, it'll kind of ruin what you have as a friend. And it's like, but obviously you want to be more different. The relationships are complicated. But Liz and Max, go to her room. And I love that he's like, wow, he's just soaking it in because it's like, this is the first time. Because I think during the whole thing, they do find out, like, oh yeah, like, he's never been to her room because, like, her dad was there. So, like, he showed up, but he got scared. So he's never been to her bedroom. And it's like, I thought we were going to go to the ocean. She's like, yeah, but, you know, we will eventually. But for now, like, kind of gives him a globe. And it's like, you know, a snow globe with the ocean. It's like, yeah, this will have to do. So I need you to do me a favor, Max Evans. I need you to close and lock the door of your mind. And he does. I'm like, yeah. But then we get our stinger at the end where we have an alien walking and it's freezing stuff along the way. And there's a woman named Allie, which I'm like, are we supposed to know who she is? Because she was like, oh, like, I was Liz Ortega's teacher. I was like, I'm trying to remember, like, are we supposed to know who she is? Maybe I'm being stupid. I feel like I don't know. I don't think we're supposed to know who she is, but I guess she's the one that, like, Liz kind of learned everything she learned from. So I guess, like, her landing, this alien landing where she landed, wasn't a coincidence, because she's looking for Liz Ortega, and it's like, well, how do you know that name? So I was under the assumption, like I said, Nora was his right hand. Maybe this is Jones's left hand here. That's like, even if I can't finish my work, you're going to be the one to finish it all. Or maybe someone else, like, maybe, because he did, like, because it does seem like he was able to contact someone, but it was like more a something. So part of me wondered, because it was like the whole thing was about a ship, and he was talking about other people being aboard. So it's probably a thing of, she's not the only one. Like, it's not like she's the only one that landed here. The others are probably still in stasis, that she's maybe the only one that woke up. So what abilities the others might have, if it's just, I would assume it's more than just her. Like, I'm assuming, like, everyone that's on that ship is other people in service to the dictator. So other people that, yeah, I might be gone, but they'll be continuing my thing, like, you know, continuing to pick up where my story left off, maybe. But especially running into someone who is connected to Liz, maybe that was on purpose. Because you just happen to land somewhere that, you know, so who, like I said, who Allie is and what her connection is to Liz, like why it seems like she's, like, the fact is that maybe she's someone that like I said, I'm trying to figure out if we're supposed to know who she is. I don't think we are, but, like, the fact is that the person was like, oh yeah, you said someone about somebody coming from the sky whenever you kind of get drunk. So I was like, either like she knows a little bit more about the alien stuff because, like, Liz did turn to her, or maybe, like, Liz kind of discredited her a little bit just so she wouldn't know about the alien stuff. Like I said, I don't know. Do let me know in the comments down below, is she someone we're supposed to know? Because if she is, I'm not remembering. But it does set up a lot of interesting things. Like, you dealt with Jones, you dealt with the big galactic bully, as Michael said at one point. But, you know, still other threats looming. But, you know, I guess that, you know, story for another time, essentially. So, Roswell, New Mexico was renewed for a 4th season. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where the next chapter in the story takes us with everyone's kind of taking their steps forward. I think everyone's kind of in a good place, once again, with the exception of Kyle. Like I said, Rosa is going to be in New York for a little bit, for a couple months, but I'm sure, like, something's going to everything is probably going to draw her back. But, like, everyone's in a good space, but obviously this looming threat of, like, what's coming next and what transpires there. Dallas learning all the potentially that he's capable of, and also learning all this stuff about aliens. Like I said, I'd probably see more, and definitely more of him going forward, but maybe more of Heath as well. So, now, like, obviously the ties of the deep sky situation. So, like, what happens going forward with all of that? I mean, especially because that kind of falls in Kyle's lane of territory, because his uncle runs it, and obviously he wants to continue his father's legacy. So him and Alex are probably still going to be deeply tied to, well, deep sky. So it's definitely going to be really interesting to see where season 4 takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.